The crisp autumn wind whistled through the concrete canyons of New York City as the sun began its descent behind the towering skyscrapers. The streets were alive with the usual evening rush, yellow cabs honking their horns, business people hurrying home, and tourists snapping photos of the city's famous landmarks. Outside Trump Tower, the security team was preparing for their boss's departure after a long day of meetings. Donald Trump emerged from the golden doors of his building, his signature red tie slightly askew from the lengthy boardroom sessions. He was tired but satisfied, having just closed a major real estate deal. His security detail formed their usual protective formation around him, ready to escort him to the waiting black SUV that would take him to his next appointment. But fate had other plans for that evening. As they began walking toward the vehicle, something caught Trump's attention from the corner of his eye. In the shadow of a neighboring building's doorway, partially hidden behind a stack of cardboard boxes, sat a young woman. What struck him wasn't just her presence, but her condition. She was visibly pregnant, her swollen belly prominent despite the layers of worn clothing she wore to fight off the autumn chill. The woman was trying to make herself as small as possible in the doorway, clutching a thin blanket around her shoulders. Her eyes were fixed on the ground, avoiding the gazes of passers-by who hurried past, most pretending not to notice her existence. A small cardboard sign rested against her legs, its message written in shaky handwriting, "Please help. Baby coming soon." Trump's security team continued moving forward, assuming their boss would follow as usual. But something made him stop. Maybe it was the way the woman's hands trembled as she tried to pull the blanket tighter. Perhaps it was the stark contrast between the luxury of his world and her desperate situation. Or possibly it was the thought of an unborn child facing such harsh circumstances before even entering the world. "Hold up," Trump called out to his team, his voice cutting through the urban cacophony. The security detail turned, surprised by the unexpected delay. A small crowd of onlookers began to gather, their phones automatically rising to capture whatever was about to unfold. Some recognized the famous figure, and whispers started circulating through the growing audience. The woman looked up as Trump's shadow fell across her makeshift shelter, her eyes widening with recognition. She tried to speak, but her voice was hoarse from the cold and lack of use. Trump noticed her cracked lips and the dark circles under her eyes, signs of someone who hadn't had a proper meal or a good night's sleep in far too long. As he stood there, the usual bustle of New York City seemed to fade into the background. This wasn't about politics, media coverage, or business deals. This was about a human being and her unborn child in desperate need of help. The woman's gaze met his, and in that moment, any hesitation about what to do next vanished. Trump motioned to his head of security, who quickly approached, already anticipating that their schedule for the evening was about to change. The crowd watching the scene grew larger, their phones recording every movement, but for once, Trump wasn't thinking about the cameras or what people might say. His focus was entirely on the pregnant woman huddled in the doorway and what he could do to help. Little did anyone know that this chance encounter on a chilly New York evening would set in motion a chain of events that would touch not only these two lives, but inspire a movement of compassion that would spread far beyond the shadows of Trump Tower. The story that was about to unfold would remind everyone that sometimes the most significant moments in life come when we least expect them, and that kindness knows no boundaries of status, wealth, or circumstance. As Trump knelt down beside the young woman, the evening traffic continued to flow behind them, creating a strange backdrop to this unexpected moment. The woman, who appeared to be in her late 20s, looked up at him with eyes that held both hope and hesitation. Her long brown hair was tied back neatly despite her circumstances, suggesting someone who hadn't given up on dignity despite losing everything else. "How long have you been out here?" Trump asked, his voice softer than his usual public speaking tone. His security team had formed a protective circle around them, keeping the growing crowd of onlookers at a respectful distance. The woman's voice trembled as she spoke, but there was strength beneath the uncertainty. 3 months, she replied, unconsciously placing a protective hand over her pregnant belly. "I never thought I'd end up like this. I was studying to be a nurse at the city college." She paused, gathering herself before continuing. Her story spilled out like water from a broken dam. She'd been halfway through her nursing program when her husband, a construction worker, had fallen from a scaffold at work. The insurance company had fought the claim, leaving them with mounting medical bills. Then came the devastating news of his passing, followed by the discovery of her pregnancy. Everything happened so fast, she explained, her words carrying the weight of months of buried pain. The medical bills, the funeral costs, the legal fees. I tried to keep up with rent and continue my studies, but eventually, she gestured at her surroundings, the doorway that had become her unwanted home. Trump listened intently, noting how she spoke about her education and career goals. This wasn't someone looking for an easy handout. This was a person who'd been knocked down by circumstances beyond her control. The crowd around them had grown larger, but their usual New York City impatience had been replaced by respectful silence as they witnessed this unexpected scene. "The baby's due in about 6 weeks," she continued, her voice breaking slightly. "I've been trying to save enough to at least get a room somewhere before then, but," she glanced down at the few dollar bills and loose change in the small cup beside her, the meager results of a day's worth of passers-by. Trump noticed she was shivering despite trying to hide it. The autumn evening was growing colder, and her thin blanket offered little protection against the chill. Without hesitation, he removed his coat, an expensive piece from his personal tailor, and draped it over her shoulders. The simple gesture seemed to break down a wall, and tears began rolling down her cheeks. "I've been to every shelter in the area," she explained, pulling the warm coat tighter around herself. "They're all full, and the waiting lists." She shook her head, the frustration of countless dead ends evident in her expression. "I keep trying to find work, but as soon as they see," she gestured to her pregnant belly. The story she shared wasn't just about homelessness, it was about how quickly life can change, how one tragedy can spiral into another, and how the systems meant to help people can sometimes fail those who need them most. Trump found himself thinking about the empty rooms in his buildings, the connections he had throughout the city, and the resources at his disposal that could change this woman's life. Around them, the crowd had grown even larger, with some people wiping tears from their eyes as they listened to the exchange. A few had put away their phones, seemingly realizing that this moment was about more than capturing viral content. It was about witnessing genuine human connection in the most unexpected of places. As the woman finished her story, Trump stood up, his mind already racing with possibilities. He'd made countless business decisions in his life, but something told him that what he was about to do next might be one of the most important choices he'd ever make. The story of this woman's journey from nursing student to homeless mother-to-be had struck a chord that went beyond politics or public image. It touched on the basic human desire to help someone in genuine need. The sun had nearly set now, casting long shadows across the city streets, but for the woman in the doorway, it felt like the first rays of dawn were finally breaking through a very long night. Neither she nor Trump knew it yet, but this chance encounter was about to change not only their lives, but inspire a chain of events that would impact countless others in ways they couldn't imagine. The crowd watched in stunned silence as Trump pulled out his phone and began making calls. His voice carried the same authority he used in business deals, but now it was being put to a very different use. "Listen, I need a favor," he said into the phone, pacing a few steps away from the woman but keeping her in sight. "I have a situation here that needs immediate attention." The security team exchanged glances, their usual routine completely disrupted, but none of them questioned their boss's actions. One of them had already radioed ahead to cancel Trump's next appointment. The woman remained in the doorway, still wrapped in Trump's coat, watching with a mixture of disbelief and cautious hope as this surreal scene unfolded. "I own a hotel 3 blocks from here," Trump explained to her, covering the phone's microphone with his hand. "We're going to get you set up there tonight." The woman's eyes widened, her hands trembling as she wiped away fresh tears. Around them, the crowd had grown even larger, with some people starting to clap, while others continued recording the unexpected act of kindness on their phones. Trump's next call was to his personal physician. "I need you to clear your schedule for tomorrow morning," he said firmly. "We have a pregnant woman who needs immediate medical attention." He listened for a moment, then nodded. "Yes, full checkup, whatever she needs." "I'm covering all of it." The woman tried to protest, overwhelmed by the sudden turn of events. "Mr. Trump, I can't possibly accept." But he waved off her objections with a gentle but firm gesture. "You're not accepting anything," he said. "I'm investing in your future and your baby's future. That's what I do. I invest in potential. A black SUV pulled up to the curb, and Trump's head of security approached with a wheelchair he borrowed from a nearby building's doorman. The woman hesitated for a moment, years of independence making it hard to accept help, even in her desperate situation. Trump noticed her reluctance and understood it completely. "Sometimes the strongest thing we can do is accept help when we need it," he said quietly, in a tone rarely heard in his public speeches. "Let's get you somewhere warm, and then we can figure out the next steps." His words seemed to reach something deep inside her, and she nodded, allowing the security team to help her into the wheelchair. As they helped her up, the crowd's applause grew louder. Someone started recording a livestream, narrating the events as they unfolded. "You're not going to believe this, but I'm watching Donald Trump help a homeless pregnant woman right now." The story was already spreading across social media, but Trump seemed oblivious to the attention, focused entirely on ensuring the woman was safely settled in the vehicle. Before they left, Trump noticed the few possessions she had: a small backpack, some documents in a plastic bag, and a worn photo album. He instructed his team to carefully collect everything, treating these modest belongings with the same respect they would give to precious artifacts. The woman clutched the photo album to her chest as they helped her into the SUV, and Trump noticed it was filled with pictures of her late husband and her nursing school graduation ceremony. "Your story isn't over," Trump told her as they settled into the vehicle. "It's just taking an unexpected turn." He pulled out his phone again, this time calling the hotel manager directly. "I need your best available room prepared immediately," he instructed. "Full service, whatever she needs, and I want your most experienced staff assigned to help." As the SUV pulled away from the curb, the crowd began to disperse, but the energy of what they'd witnessed lingered in the air. Many people were already sharing the story online, their posts filled with surprise and emotion at seeing this unexpected display of compassion from someone they thought they had figured out. Inside the vehicle, Trump continued making arrangements, calling for medical supplies, organizing for fresh clothes to be delivered to the hotel, and ensuring there would be proper meals waiting. The woman sat quietly, still wrapped in his coat, watching as her life changed dramatically in the span of less than an hour. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "I don't know how I'll ever repay you." Trump turned to her with a serious expression. "You want to repay me? Finish your nursing degree. Help others when you're back on your feet. That's how this works. We lift each other up." As they drove through the glittering city streets, neither of them could have predicted how this chance encounter would ripple out into the world, touching lives far beyond that single evening in New York City. The story was already spreading across social media, but the real impact would go far deeper than any viral moment could capture. The next morning, Trump arrived at his office earlier than usual. The events of the previous evening had kept him awake most of the night, his mind working through various ways to turn this single act of kindness into something bigger. His assistant had already prepared a thick folder of information about homelessness among pregnant women in New York City, and the statistics were eye-opening. He received regular updates about the woman throughout the night. She had eaten her first proper meal in weeks, taken a warm shower, and slept in a real bed. The hotel staff reported that she had cried when she saw the room, overwhelmed by the simple luxuries that most people took for granted. The story had exploded online overnight, with millions of shares and comments flooding social media. "Get me the dean of the nursing school," Trump instructed his assistant as he reviewed the morning's papers. The woman's unfinished education represented more than just her personal dream. It was a path to independence, a way to ensure she'd never find herself in such a desperate situation again. While waiting for the call to be connected, Trump scrolled through his phone, reading some of the responses to last night's events. The comments ranged from cynical to deeply moved, but what caught his attention were the messages from other business owners asking how they could help. An idea began forming in his mind. The dean of the nursing school picked up on the second ring. After explaining the situation, Trump made his proposal: a new scholarship program for students facing extreme hardship, with special consideration for single parents and those dealing with personal tragedies. "We need to catch people before they fall through the cracks," he explained, his voice carrying the same intensity he usually reserved for business negotiations. As he hung up the phone, his assistant entered with more news. The woman's story had inspired others to action. Local businesses were calling, offering jobs and support. A women's clothing store had sent over a wardrobe of maternity clothes. A medical supply company wanted to donate everything needed for the baby. But Trump wasn't satisfied with just helping one person. He called in his legal team and began drafting plans for a more permanent solution. "We need to set up a foundation," he announced, pacing the room as he often did when big ideas were forming. "Something that can help other women in similar situations. But it's not just about giving them money, it's about giving them a chance to rebuild their lives." The media was clamoring for interviews, but Trump had instructed his team to keep them at bay for now. This wasn't about publicity or politics, it was about doing something meaningful. He'd spent the morning making calls to other hotel owners in the city, proposing a network of emergency housing for pregnant women in crisis. Around noon, his assistant brought in an update about the woman. The medical checkup had gone well. Both mother and baby were healthy, though she needed proper prenatal care and better nutrition. The doctor had been impressed by her knowledge of medical terminology, noting how she had asked intelligent questions about her condition. Her nursing background showed through, even in her current circumstances. Trump sat at his desk, reviewing the preliminary plans for the foundation. He'd already assigned a team to look into similar programs across the country, learning from what worked and what didn't. This had to be more than just temporary help. It needed to be a bridge to a better life. The woman's story had struck a chord with people because it showed how quickly life could change, how anyone could find themselves in desperate circumstances despite their best efforts. Trump understood this on a business level. He'd faced his own setbacks and bankruptcies before rebuilding. But this was different. This was about basic human dignity and the chance to start over. As the afternoon wore on, more offers of help continued pouring in. A real estate developer offered apartments for women in the program. A local college wanted to provide childcare for student mothers. Each call represented another piece of the puzzle, another step toward creating real, lasting change. Trump stopped at one point to watch the sunset over the city skyline. Yesterday at this time, he'd been focused on business deals and meetings. Now he was seeing his city, his resources, and his role in a completely different light. The woman's unfinished nursing degree certificate, which she'd kept carefully preserved despite her hardships, sat on his desk, a reminder of dreams interrupted but not abandoned. "Set up a meeting with the hospital administrators," he told his assistant. "We need to discuss creating a fast-track program for nursing students who've had to pause their education due to personal crisis." The pieces were falling into place, turning one moment of compassion into a movement that could change countless lives. A week had passed since that fateful evening outside Trump Tower. The woman had settled into a comfortable routine at the hotel, but health improving daily with proper nutrition and rest. But Trump's vision for change was just beginning to take shape, spreading like ripples in a pond. The morning started with a meeting in Trump's office, where business leaders from across New York had gathered. The room buzzed with energy as people shared ideas and made commitments. A prominent developer pledged 10 apartments in each of his buildings for emergency housing. A restaurant chain owner offered job training programs in their kitchens. Each person brought something unique to the table. "This isn't charity," Trump explained, standing at the head of the conference table. "This is an investment in human potential." He shared the woman's story again, not for emotional effect, but to illustrate the gap between people's capabilities and their circumstances. She was almost finished with nursing school. Think about that. We nearly lost a skilled healthcare worker because life threw her a curveball. The meeting was interrupted by exciting news from the nursing school. They had reviewed the woman's academic records and confirmed she needed just one semester to complete her degree. More importantly, inspired by her story, they had decided to create a new program for students facing similar challenges. Trump's phone kept lighting up with messages from other cities. Business leaders in Chicago, Los Angeles, and Miami wanted to know how they could start similar programs. The story had touched something in people, a reminder that success in business didn't have to mean turning a blind eye to human suffering. In the afternoon, Trump visited the woman at the hotel. She was sitting by the window, reading through medical textbooks that the nursing school had sent over. Her face had regained its color, and her eyes sparkled with renewed hope. She shared her plans for the future, talking about specializing in helping other women through difficult pregnancies. "I never thought I'd be studying again," she said, gesturing to the books spread around her. "When you're out there on the streets, you stop dreaming about tomorrow. You just think about surviving today." Her words stuck with Trump, reinforcing his commitment to creating lasting change. Back at his office, Trump met with his legal team to finalize the foundation's structure. They had designed it to be sustainable, not just depending on donations, but creating partnerships with businesses and educational institutions. The focus wasn't just on providing immediate help, it was about creating paths to independence. The media had finally caught wind of the full story, and requests for interviews were pouring in. Trump agreed to one carefully chosen interviewer, not to boast about his actions, but to shine a light on the larger issue. "We're not just talking about homelessness," he explained during the interview. "We're talking about lost potential, about dreams put on hold, about people who want to contribute to society but need a bridge to get there." As evening approached, Trump received an unexpected call. A group of nurses from the local hospital had started a mentorship program, volunteering their time to help students who were struggling with personal challenges. They had named it after the woman, turning her story into a symbol of resilience and hope. The woman's due date was getting closer, and Trump had ensured everything was in place. A fully furnished apartment was waiting for her, complete with a nursery. The hospital's best maternity team was on standby. But more importantly, she had a future to look forward to, a career, a support system, and a chance to help others who might find themselves in similar situations. Looking out over the city as the day ended, Trump reflected on how one moment of compassion had grown into something much bigger. The foundation was already helping other women, the business community had awakened to their role in social change, and a system was being built to catch people before they fell through the cracks. A text message buzzed on his phone, a photo from the woman. She was holding up her student ID card, recently reissued by the nursing school. Her smile said everything about the power of second chances and the importance of reaching out to help others. This wasn't just about one person anymore. It was about changing how society responded to people in crisis, about building bridges instead of walls. 2 weeks had passed since the foundation's launch, and the impact was already visible across New York City. Trump stood in the newly renovated building that would serve as the program's headquarters. What had once been an unused floor of office space had been transformed into a warm, welcoming center for women seeking help. The morning sun streamed through large windows, illuminating the space where several pregnant women were meeting with counselors. Each had their own story, their own dreams put on hold by circumstances beyond their control. The woman whose chance encounter had started it all was there too, now volunteering her time to help others while preparing for her final semester of nursing school. "We need to show them what's possible," she told Trump as they walked through the center. Her voice was stronger now, filled with purpose. She had gone from being someone who needed help to someone who could offer it, and the transformation was remarkable. She carried a tablet with her, keeping track of each woman's needs and progress: housing, education, job training, medical care. Trump listened as she explained how they were improving the program based on real experiences. "When you've been there yourself," she said, "you know what questions to ask, what problems to look out for." Her insights had already led to several important changes in how they approached helping new arrivals. The center buzzed with activity. In one corner, a job training session was underway, teaching computer skills and professional development. In another, a healthcare worker was conducting prenatal classes. The walls were decorated with success stories, women who had completed their education, found stable jobs, and were now mentoring others. Mr. Trump called out one of the staff members. "The hospital coordinators are here for the meeting." They had set up a partnership with 3 major hospitals in the city, creating a fast-track program for medical support staff. It wasn't just about helping the women in crisis, it was about addressing the broader healthcare worker shortage by tapping into this overlooked pool of talent. In the conference room, hospital administrators shared their early results. 2 women from the program had already started working as medical assistants while continuing their education. The hospitals reported that these employees showed exceptional empathy with patients, their own experiences adding a valuable perspective to their work. Trump's phone kept buzzing with updates from other cities launching similar programs. Chicago had just opened their first center. Los Angeles was converting an old hotel into housing units. The idea was spreading, evolving, and improving as more people got involved. During lunch, they hosted a small celebration for one of the women who had just received her certified nursing assistant certification. Everyone gathered around as she shared her story, how she had lost everything in a house fire, found herself homeless while pregnant, and now was back on her feet with a new career ahead of her. The woman who started it all watched from the side, tears in her eyes. "This is what hope looks like," she whispered to Trump. "When I was out there on the street, I thought I was invisible. Now I know that everyone has value, everyone deserves a chance to rebuild." In the afternoon, Trump met with his business team to review the program's finances. The foundation was growing faster than expected, with donations and support pouring in from unexpected sources. Small business owners were offering job placements. Local colleges were creating flexible class schedules. It had become a community effort, far beyond what any one person or organization could achieve alone. A group of former program participants had started their own support network, meeting regularly to share advice and encouragement. They called themselves the Bridge, symbolizing the transition from crisis to stability. Their insights were invaluable in helping new arrivals navigate the challenges ahead. As the day drew to a close, Trump watched a young woman walk through the center's doors for the first time, clearly nervous but gathering her courage. The staff welcomed her with warmth and understanding, just as they had been trained to do. In her face, he saw the same mix of fear and hope he had seen that evening outside Trump Tower. "Every person who walks through that door," he said to his team, "is someone's daughter, someone's sister, maybe someone's mother. They're not statistics. They're people with dreams and abilities who just need a chance to prove themselves." The words resonated with everyone in the room, reinforcing their commitment to the program's mission. That evening, as Trump left the center, he passed the spot where he had first met the woman who inspired all this. The doorway was empty now, but it served as a reminder of how a single moment of compassion could spark a movement that changed countless lives. 1 year had passed since that life-changing evening outside Trump Tower. The autumn air carried the same crispness, but so much had changed. Trump stood at the podium in the foundation's main hall, surrounded by hundreds of people gathered for the first anniversary celebration. In the front row sat the woman who had started it all, now holding her healthy 8-month-old baby girl. She looked completely different from the person he'd met in that doorway. Confident, healthy, and wearing her newly earned nursing scrubs. She had just finished her shift at the hospital where she now worked in the maternal care unit. "When we talk about the American dream," Trump began his speech, "we often focus on business success or financial achievements. But sometimes the greatest success stories are about second chances and helping others." He gestured to the room filled with program graduates, current participants, and supporters from the business community. The foundation had exceeded all expectations. In just 1 year, they had helped over 300 women find housing and start new careers. The program had spread to 15 cities across the country, each adapting the model to fit their local needs. What had started as one act of kindness had grown into a nationwide movement. After the formal speeches, people mingled and shared their stories. A young woman proudly showed off her acceptance letter to medical school. Another had just been promoted to supervisor at the hospital, where she started as an entry-level worker. Each success story was unique, but they all shared a common thread: someone had believed in them when they needed it most. The woman who inspired it all gave tours of the facility to visitors, her baby strapped securely to her chest in a carrier. She showed them the classroom where she now taught evening classes on medical terminology to program participants. Her daughter cooed and smiled at everyone, becoming the unofficial mascot of the foundation. In the kitchen area, a group of current participants was preparing for their food service certification exam. The program had expanded beyond healthcare to include various career paths, recognizing that everyone had different skills and dreams. Some women had shown entrepreneurial spirits, starting small businesses with microloans from the foundation. Trump walked through the crowded hall, stopping to talk with participants and graduates. He remembered many of their stories: the former teacher who lost everything in a divorce, the talented chef who fled domestic violence, the aspiring artist who had been living in her car. Each one had found not just shelter, but a path forward. The foundation's approach had caught the attention of policymakers. Several cities had adopted their model of combining emergency housing with education and career training. The program's success rate was impressive. 85% of participants were now employed and living independently. Later in the afternoon, they held a special ceremony for the newest addition to the foundation, a childcare center named after the woman's baby daughter. The center would provide free childcare for program participants, removing one of the biggest barriers to education and employment for single mothers. The woman took the podium to share her story once again, but this time not as a cautionary tale. Her voice strong and clear, she spoke about hope, resilience, and the power of community. Her baby watched from Trump's arms. He had insisted on holding her while her mother spoke, a touching symbol of how far they'd all come. "A year ago, I thought my story was over," she said, looking out at the crowd. "I was wrong. It was just beginning. And now, every woman who walks through these doors gets to begin her story again too." The room erupted in applause, many eyes filling with tears. As the event wound down, Trump stood by the window, watching the sunset over the city. The woman joined him, her baby now sleeping peacefully in her arms. They didn't need words to express what this moment meant, how a chance encounter had turned into something that would continue changing lives for years to come. Outside, the city streets were busy with evening traffic, just like they had been that night a year ago. But now, thanks to the foundation's work, fewer desperate souls would have to spend their nights in doorways. More importantly, more people understood that homelessness wasn't the end of someone's story, it could be the beginning of their comeback. The foundation had become more than just a shelter or a training program. It had become a symbol of what was possible when people chose to see past circumstances to the human potential within. As Trump and the woman watched the city lights come on, they knew this was still just the beginning. There were more stories to be changed, more lives to be touched, more dreams to be rebuilt, one person at a time.